All right, we are now live. So this is our weekly wisdom webinar. We do it every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We just log in and answer questions that were either submitted ahead of time or our clients ask or participants ask live while we're going on the webinar. And I always start with positive focus, just something positive that happened over the last week or so. And my positive focus is that we have our walk to end Alzheimer's scheduled. It's going to be September 30th in Howell. So this is the Livingston walk to end Alzheimer's. We'd love for you to join our team. It's always a good turnout. Alzheimer's is something that's had a dramatic effect on my family, as well as a lot of clients that we deal with and work with. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart, both personally as well as professionally. I just put a link in. If you click that link, you can kind of hear my story, why it's important to me. And then also, if you want to take a minute to join our team, and if you can walk, that'd be great. We'll send you a t-shirt. Should be a good day. If you can't make it that day, too far of a drive, and you want to donate to the cause, feel free to just click that link, and every little bit helps. So something our firm's really made a priority. We probably raised over $50,000 for the Alzheimer's Association over the last couple of years. And again, that link should be in the chat. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, if you do have a legal, financial, or tax question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. I didn't really have any submitted, so what I'm going to do is talk about something that keeps coming up in my client meetings. I was just actually on a webinar, educational webinar yesterday for continuing education credits, and we were talking about this very topic. So let me share my screen. And it's something we've been really banging the drum on for a number of years, and I'm surprised there's not more advisors talking about this, because I think taxes are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities. In fact, I just sat with a client today. We're putting together a legal plan, and he has an advisor that he's really comfortable with, a local guy who I know. And I didn't have a good answer for why it wasn't being brought up. But the big thing is, I think, and I've talked about this, taxes are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities right now. And for a couple of reasons. And so I was on this educational webinar with a national expert, Michael Kitsis, who's kind of like does a lot of deep dive research on issues. But the thing is, this question of to Roth or not, should we look at paying the taxes sooner rather than later? And really, when I'm talking about to Roth or not, really what I'm talking about is just developing some type of IRA exit strategy. Because it's more about just doing the Roth. That's an easy one, the Roth conversion. But it's developing some type of IRA exit strategy. And everyone's situation is a little bit different. Typically, we're dealing with a lot of almost or pre-retirees, maybe 5 years out from retirement, or people who've retired within the last 5 years or who are already retired. And it's really hard pressed for me, and feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A, reasons why you shouldn't be looking at some type of IRA exit strategy. Like if you have some reason you think that you shouldn't be exploring paying the taxes sooner rather than later, feel free to put it in the Q&A. I really haven't seen too many situations where it doesn't make sense to at least explore the idea of coming up with an IRA exit strategy. So just taking kind of one step back, just so we all have a baseline of knowledge, understand that any investment account really falls into one of three buckets. And first we have what we call taxable, the taxable bucket. Okay, this is going to be like your checking, savings. This is going to be your brokerage accounts. Basically anything that you get like a 1099, a love letter from the IRS. What's important with this is that you're taxed on, and you are potentially taxed on any gains. So you're taxed on any gains. So if there's growth in the account, you may be taxed on the gains. The second type of account is a tax deferred account. So this is going to be like your traditional IRA, your traditional 401k, traditional 403bs, etc. When you pull any money out of these accounts, they're taxed at income tax rates. Okay. And then the third type of account are accounts that grow tax-free. So this is like your Roth, index universal life insurance, 529s that have to be used for education, health savings accounts. So the big issue that I see is when I sit down with clients, a majority of their money is sitting in these tax deferred accounts because we've always been taught to defer paying taxes as long as possible. And the reason why is that the longer we defer, the more taxes we grow. Not necessarily a bigger nest egg, but the more taxes we grow. Versus if we're to do something like a Roth conversion, where we take money from the IRA, move it into the Roth, or we could take money from the IRA, move it into IUL, or sometimes we take the money from the IRA and move it into something else. Okay. So the big problem we have is that we know that taxes are going up. Okay, a couple reasons why. So first of all, we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and this runs from 2018 till 2026. And across the board, your taxes are going up 3 to 5% in 2026, all things being equal. So if you're at the 22% tax bracket, that's going to 25 or potentially 28. If you're at the 24%, that's going up to 28. If you're at the 15 or if you're at the 12, that's going up to 15. So we know all of this is going to happen in 2026. So we've been banging the drum since 2018 and even before that, that, you know what, taxes are going up. So I would rather pay the tax now by pulling money out of that IRA now at 22% versus waiting until it grows to 25, 28%. Now, the other thing that we've had going on, and we've talked about this, is that we're $32 trillion in debt now. So what's not to say that taxes are going to go up in the future? So the question is, what do we do about it? And so that's why I think everyone should be at least analyzing the idea of having some type of IRA exit strategy. And maybe that's a Roth conversion. Maybe that's just pulling the money out, putting it into a trust, which can go tax-free to the next generation, but having some type of IRA exit strategy. And again, and I'm not saying you pay all the taxes all at once, but just looking at your tax brackets, figuring out how much space you have in that bracket, and then pulling the money out. I'd be hard pressed to find a reason why not to do that. Now, here's some of the things that I hear people say of like, well, they don't want to do that. First, sometimes people say, well, Chris, if let's say I have inside of my IRA $100,000, if I were to pay the tax, and let's assume a 20% tax, and let's do a Roth conversion, that's only going to leave me $80,000. So now if my money grows, it's a smaller amount, right? We've always been taught like compounding interest, right? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's assume it's invested in the same exact thing. So they both go up 10%. So this takes us to 110,000. This takes us to 88,000. And now you're looking at it, you say, well, see, Chris, if it's pre-tax, it went up 10,000. If it's post-tax or tax-free, it goes up 8,000. That's not as good. But here's the thing. Anything inside of that IRA, unless you're doing what's called qualified charitable distributions or some type of charitable structure, that is almost always going to be taxed. So understand, we still have to take the tax out. So if the tax is 20% on that, that's $22,000. And now that's going to leave us at the end of the day, $88,000. So here's the thing. Taxes remain the same. It doesn't matter whether you do a Roth conversion or not. And again, most of our clients have more than $100,000. We're talking like $1 million or more. So it can be a dramatic shift, but if taxes remain the same, it doesn't matter. But we know taxes are going up because A, they're scheduled to, and B, we're $32 trillion in debt. So I want to put an extra 3 to 5% in your portfolio now, just by tax arbitrage. And then also you're protecting against what I think could be a really bad risk in the future, is them raising taxes to some of the pre-Ronald Reagan amounts. Right now, the highest marginal tax rate is 37%. It's been high as 60, 70, as high as 94% in the past. And the other thing is, look at this. If we delay paying the tax, what have you done? You've grown a tax bill. Okay? If you pay the tax right away, you only pay a $20,000 tax. Okay? That's why the government wants you to defer paying taxes. And again, if taxes remain the same, it's a non-issue. But we know that taxes are going up. And then also, we know that they're coming after these pre-tax accounts, because we had the Secure Act that says when you leave this money to the next generation, they have to pay all the taxes within 10 years. They used to be able to stretch out the taxes over their lifetime. So I think, especially as our deficit grows, which we're now $32 trillion in debt, prior to the pandemic, we're 22 trillion. I think one of the big keys is having this IRA exit strategy. Now, another thing that sometimes people push back on, and again, if you have a reason why you think this doesn't make sense, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Happy to address it. But I just, looking at it just from a numbers standpoint and where things might be going in the future, I think everyone, if you have any type of pre-tax accounts like IRAs, 401ks, looking at have some type of IRA exit strategy. And more than happy if someone wants to play devil's advocate to put in the Q&A or the chat of why it doesn't make sense to do this. But I just, when I sit down with clients, and even if they're working with other advisors, I don't see enough people talking about it. And I have some reasons why I think that is, but I haven't really seen a valid reason why not to explore this. Now, the other thing that you do have to keep in mind is your Medicare premiums, if you do get up into that 24% tax bracket, would go up. But I think your tax savings overall. And when we run these scenarios for clients of maxing out, say, the 24% tax bracket over 3 or 5 years versus continuing to defer, it can really have a dramatic effect on what we leave in the portfolio and what we leave as a legacy. So I just wanted to talk about that idea of to Roth or not. The window is closing. We're getting near the end of the year. We're sitting down with our clients and talking about some end of year tax planning strategies. But really, unless you're like at the top of, say, the 12% tax bracket or the top of the 24, maybe it doesn't make sense. But otherwise, I think for everyone, this is one of the easiest things to do, because it's something we can control. We can't control the markets, which have been doing great, but we can control how we pay taxes on these different accounts. So hopefully that's all. All right, see any questions? Nope. All right. Then this was just something that came through my office just as I was logging on to the webinar today. Just understanding the difference of joint ownership. So there's really 3 types of joint ownership. So there's joint ownership with right to survivorship. Joint ownership with rights of survivorship. So the long form of this, joint ownership with rights of survivorship. All right. And the way this works, let's say we have 2 people joint on a piece of property. One person passes away. Now the survivor owns that property. Okay. So it's kind of like last man standing or last woman standing or last person standing, right? Pretty straightforward, easy to understand. The other version is what's called tenants in common. So tenants in common. So same deal. We have 2 people. They own property together. One person passes away. Now what happens is that property now goes to their estate, which means it could end up in probate. Okay? So it doesn't go to the survivor. In this situation, the whole property goes to survivor. Tenants in common, it goes to the estate. So typically we don't want that. We want joint ownership with right of survivorship. And then we have another form of joint ownership, and this is only available to married couples. And this is called tenancy by the entireties. Tenancy by the entireties. And basically this is the same thing as joint ownership with right of survivorship. It's just available only to a married couple. And the nice thing about this is that it creates a level of asset protection. So if one of the spouses were sued, the survivor or the other spouse wouldn't have to lose that property. And then it works the same as joint ownership with right of survivorship, where if one spouse passes, everything goes to survivor. So those are the three types of joint ownership. We have joint ownership with rights of survivorship, probably the most common, probably the most beneficial, unless you're married. Then we have tenants in common. There we have to be careful because if that person passes away, it goes to the estate. And then we have for married couples, tenancy by the entireties, where basically acts as joint ownership with right of survivorship, but now it builds in some asset protection. So hopefully that was helpful. All right, any other questions? Let's check. Right. All right, well, that's all I got. Again, if you can take a minute, maybe visit that Alzheimer's site for us. Our Walk 10 to Alzheimer's coming up September 30th. Probably gonna keep talking about it until it happens. But with that, thank you, everyone. Make it a great week. Take care. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.